Welcome to the Continuous Improvement Lab. We're kicking off Season 1, Episode 8 right now, and thanks for tuning in.
Great to be here.
If you're finding these deep dives valuable, please do subscribe or follow. That way you won't miss future explorations.
Definitely helps us know you're out there listening.
And a special thank you this time to Tara Kendrick and Alita Johnson for their support. We really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you both. So today we're zeroing in on something pretty fundamental, I think, for any team aiming for better results.
Which is?
It's the often underestimated power of clearly defined roles and responsibilities, specifically within what people often call a management operating system, or MOS.
Right, the MOS. Basically the framework, the routines you use to manage performance. Yeah.
Exactly. It's the how you do things system.
Okay. And you shared your sources. It's clear this is a really relevant topic right now. We've got some industry research, a very insightful business case study, and leadership perspectives from, well, all sorts of sectors.
A good mix, I thought.
Yeah. So our mission today is pretty straightforward, but I think it's vital. We want to really dig into why clarity around roles is so critical for, boosting productivity and efficiency.
And pull out some practical lessons.
Exactly. Extract some actionable insights that you, our listener, can actually take away and use no matter what field you're in.
Okay, so let's dive right in. Why is this clarity so critical? Why does knowing who's accountable for what matter so much in a system like an MOS?
Well, one of the research pieces you sent over put it pretty bluntly. It said, confusion about who owns what will stall your system.
Hard to argue with that, isn't it?
Right. If it's not absolutely clear who's responsible for collecting and reporting on, say, those key performance indicators, the KPIs we track, or who's supposed to be leading the meetings effectively, or, crucially, who's following up on the action items that come out of those meetings.
Yeah, things can just grind to a halt, or at least get very, very inefficient.
Exactly. This lack of clarity, it creates this kind of organizational drag at pretty much every step.
That's a good way to put it. Drag.
You might see incomplete data, maybe unreliable data, meetings that just wander and don't really achieve much.
We've all been in those.
Oh, yeah. And those really important follow-up tasks, they just don't get done. They fall through the cracks.
Right. And think about it from, your own experience listening. Have you ever been in that situation where you thought someone else was handling a task?
And then you find out, oops, nobody was.
Exactly. That's the kind of drain on efficiency we're talking about. It happens all the time when roles aren't clear.
Okay, so to make this really concrete, let's look at a specific example. We have this compelling case study here from a company called Apex Automotive Systems.
Right, the precision parts manufacturer.
Yeah. They were facing some, significant headwinds in their production environment. They'd actually put an MOS in place, daily huddles, tracking KPIs, action item lists.
The standard stuff.
The whole works. But they just weren't seeing the improvements they expected. What was the disconnect there?
Well, what Apex found really highlights a super common pitfall. They had the structure of the MOS, the meetings, the lists.
The scaffolding was there.
Exactly. But the absolutely crucial element of who was responsible for each specific part of that structure, that was missing, or at least very fuzzy.
Oh.
And as a result, you saw exactly what we just talked about. Their data was inconsistent, meetings lacked focus, didn't have clear outcomes, and those vital action items, often left unresolved, just hanging there.
Which must have created a lot of wasted effort and, I imagine, some real frustration on the team.
Understandably, yeah. Definitely frustration.
So how did Apex tackle this? It sounds like they didn't just, give up. They took a very deliberate approach.
They did. They launched a really targeted initiative. The whole point was specifically to define and document every single key role within their MOS.
So not just a quick chat.
No. This was meticulous. They mapped out exactly who was responsible for collecting and updating each KPI, who would lead the various daily and weekly meetings, and maybe most importantly, who had clear ownership for the follow-through and completion of every single action item generated.
Okay, but just figuring that out internally wasn't quite enough, was it? They had to make sure everyone actually understood these new assignments.
Absolutely critical point. They clearly documented all these roles, right?
Yeah.
Then they proactively shared this information with everyone.
Everyone.
Everyone, from the folks working directly on the production line right up to the management team. And they backed it up with training sessions.
Ah, training too.
Yep, to make sure everyone understood not just their own responsibilities, but also how their role connected with others. Sort of the whole ecosystem.
That makes sense.
And they did something else smart for ongoing reinforcement. They created visual role charts. simple posters or diagrams.
And put them up where people could see them.
Exactly. Posted them right in the relevant work areas. Constant reminder.
That sounds like a pretty comprehensive strategy, actually. And the results, as I remember reading, were quite significant.
They really were, and pretty fast, too. Within just 2 months on the 8 weeks, Apex saw a 14% improvement in meeting their production schedules.
14% in 8 weeks? That's substantial.
It is. And a 10% increase in the rate at which they were closing out identified issues or problems.
Wow. Okay.
Think about what that means in real terms. Tangible improvements in key operational metrics, and fast. Plus, they also noticed their team meetings became much more productive.
Because people knew who was supposed to be leading and what the goals were.
Precisely. The facilitators were clear on their role in guiding the discussion, ensuring accountability, and with clear ownership of the data and the action tracking, well, the production teams could just make better, faster decisions.
And maybe catch problems earlier.
Exactly. Address potential issues before they blew up into major disruptions.
It sounds like the impact went way beyond just the numbers on a spreadsheet, though, like culturally.
Oh, absolutely. There was a palpable cultural shift. You heard employees saying they felt more empowered, more accountable.
Because they knew what their piece of the puzzle was.
Right. They had a clear understanding of their specific contributions and how they fit into the bigger picture.
Mm-hmm.
And interestingly, supervisors found they had more time.
More time. Huh.
More bandwidth for coaching, for strategic thinking. Because they weren't constantly having to chase down tasks that had, fallen through the cracks before.
Because the system was working better, ownership was clear.
Exactly. The Apex story, I think, really underscores how bringing that clarity to MOS roles can foster a much more efficient, accountable, and ultimately just a more productive working environment.
That is a powerful real-world example. Okay, so let's broaden the view a bit now. What are the larger industry trends saying? What insights are we getting from leadership across different sectors? Because this isn't just an automotive issue, is it?
Not at all. This focus on clearly defining MOS roles, it's a really consistent theme across a huge range of industries. Think about sectors like manufacturing, warehousing, the whole supply chain places where speed and efficiency are just paramount.
Right. High volume, high pace.
Yeah. It's a major focus for leadership there. The Lean Enterprise Institute, for instance, they report that organizations with really clearly defined MOS roles see up to a 22% improvement in just process compliance alone.
22%.
Yes. And a 15% reduction in operational delays. Think about the cost savings there.
Cute.
Because when there's ambiguity around roles in those fast-paced settings, you see exactly what we saw at Apex, but maybe writ large. Missed data, meetings that don't drive action, unresolved issues piling up.
Which directly hits the bottom line in customer satisfaction.
Absolutely. So leaders are prioritizing role clarity for that enhanced accountability and just more streamlined execution.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense for those kinds of operational environments. What about fields that are maybe more project-oriented, like engineering or supply chain management on the planning side?
Yeah, great question. In those sectors, a lack of clarity around who owns specific tasks, or critically, who makes certain decisions, that can really create bottlenecks. It just slows everything down.
Or big delays. Yeah.
Exactly. There was a study by Deloitte that indicated engineering teams with clear ownership of tasks and deliverables, they see an average reduction of 12% in rework.
Less doing things over again.
Right. And also fewer project timeline overruns. Again, significant savings in time and resources.
And in the supply chain itself.
Similarly, distribution centers, logistics hubs, the places that have really clearly defined responsibilities for different parts of the fulfillment process, they've reported improvements in order fulfillment efficiency of up to 18%.
18% faster getting orders out the door.
Basically, yeah. So the core insight here, again, is that when everyone understands their specific role and their accountabilities within a project or a process, things just run much more smoothly. Performance gaps get spotted faster, and they get addressed more effectively.
It's interesting, though, to see how this principle extends even further into sectors you might not immediately think of when you hear operations like, say, services or even marketing.
You're absolutely right. And there's a definite increasing awareness in service-based industries and in marketing departments that having clear roles within their operational frameworks is just as critical.
Really? How does that play out?
Well, McKinsey, for example, found that marketing teams, if they have clearly defined ownership for different campaign elements, different tasks, they experience a 16% improvement in project turnaround times.
Faster campaigns?
Faster campaigns and fewer client escalations. things just go more smoothly.
Okay. And in service environments like customer support or professional services?
Yeah, when roles are clearly defined around things like tracking customer satisfaction KPIs,
Yeah.
who owns client communication, who's driving process improvements, organizations have seen around a 10% improvement in their overall customer satisfaction scores.
10% happier customers just from role clarity?
It's a big factor because the consistent leadership insight, no matter the industry, seems to be this. Ambiguity stifles accountability. It just does. Whereas well-defined roles really accelerate execution.
So it really seems like across the board, organizations are increasingly getting it. They're recognizing the fundamental importance of weaving this role clarity right into their core operating systems.
Absolutely. It's moving from a nice-to-have to a must-have,
Yeah.
from those daily stand-up meetings on a factory floor, all the way to ensuring accountability for the results of a complex marketing campaign, clearly outlined roles, make sure nothing gets overlooked. No task is left unclaimed.
Sounds foundational, really.
It really is becoming clear that it's foundational for fostering effective cross-functional collaboration too, right? And enabling better data-driven decision-making. And ultimately for achieving those sustained gains in productivity, getting stronger employee engagement, and building that culture of continuous improvement. Doesn't matter the industry.
Okay, so let's bring this all back home. For you, our listener, what are the key takeaways here? Why should this whole concept of role clarity really resonate with you no matter what your day-to-day work looks like?
Well, I think the benefits of having clear roles and responsive entities are just remarkably universal. First off, you can definitely expect to see increased accountability.
Makes sense. If someone clearly owns it.
It's far more likely to get done and probably done well. And that directly translates into improved efficiency and fewer of those really frustrating delays we talked about.
Right. Less wasted time.
Communication within teams also tends to become much smoother because everyone knows exactly who to go to for specific information or for certain tasks. No more guessing games.
That alone is huge.
It really is. And it can significantly boost employee engagement too. People feel more confident, more empowered when they have a really clear understanding of their responsibilities and, importantly, how their work actually contributes to the overall goals.
Feeling like you know what you're supposed to do and that it matters.
Exactly. So ultimately, it just leads to a more focused, more effective approach to, well, all the work that needs to get done.
It really does make you think about your own work environment, doesn't it? Like, are there areas maybe in your individual role or within your team where just a little bit more clarity around who's responsible for what could lead to some, noticeable improvements?
It's a great question to ask yourself. So, yeah, this deep dive into the critical importance of clarifying roles and responsibilities within a management operating system, it's really highlighted how this seemingly simple principle can have just a profound impact on how well an organization works.
We've definitely explored some compelling data from industry research and looked at the practical side through that Apex Automotive Systems success story.
Yeah, good blend, hopefully.
Thanks so much for joining us for this session of the Continuous Improvement Lab. For additional information and resources, please do visit our website. It's www.karasinnovations.com.
Lots more there.
Yep. And a special thank you to our executive producer and founder, Lanier Johnson.
Thanks, Lanier. Now, as you go about your day, maybe just mull this over. Think about one specific area, just one, within your work or maybe your team, where bringing a little more clarity to just one key role. Think about what improvements that could potentially unlock.
A small thing to ponder.
But it could be the catalyst for some pretty significant positive change. Food for thought.